Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Kate Rivera. I use she, her pronouns. I am the Executive Director of the Technology Learning Collaborative. I invite all of you to use the chat feature to introduce yourselves as well. You can include your name, your pronouns, and the organization that you're from if you are from an organization. For those who may be unfamiliar with the Technology Learning Collaborative, or TLC, we are a Philadelphia-based digital equity coalition. So we work to bring together all of the individuals and organizations that are working on digital inclusion and digital equity in the Philadelphia area. And we also do some work with the counties around Philadelphia and have been collaborating with others across the state. And so we may have some folks joining us today, not only from Philly, but we also welcome friends from other parts of the state or even other parts of the country to this unfortunately not very cheerful discussion today. And so I'm going to briefly go over what we're going to be talking about today. I'll also say, I think, I don't know if we can say that anyone is really an expert in all of this right now. There's a lot that is just unfolding in terms of what's going on with the Affordable Connectivity Program. We're going to do our best to share with you what we know. I know there are also some folks joining us today from the city of Philadelphia, from some of the internet service providers. And so we also welcome, or some of you just may be have been learning some things about this topic yourself. So we welcome others to chime in with thoughts and ideas in the chat. And also, as we're going through this, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll try and get to them either in the chat, or we'll also pause a few times during this presentation for questions as well. And I feel like there was one other housekeeping note that I was going to make, and I don't remember what it was. So I will go ahead and get started, and I'm sure it will come to me eventually. I'm going to give a brief overview of just of what we're talking about today as far as the ACP. I'm going to turn things over to my colleague, David, who is going to go through in a little bit more detail the FCC wind-down order, what that means, what's in the order, what it means for consumers and for those of us in the nonprofit field and others who are supporting our clients and consumers with this process. And then we'll end with a little bit of information about advocacy and how you can help advocate for the continuation of the Affordable Connectivity Program. So with that, so just so we're all starting from the same knowledge base, the Affordable Connectivity Program, or ACP, it's a federal benefit which typically provides $3 a month off of a household's internet bill. And also, in some cases, has discounts for devices as well. Currently, over 22 million U.S. households, roughly 1 in 6 of all Americans, are enrolled in this program. So it is, even though it's a relatively new program, it's very clear that it's a much needed program, and a lot of folks have been able to sign up for this benefit that has helped them to gain internet access or afford their internet access. So the ACP, when it began, there was a one-time funding appropriation by Congress for the program. So there was no kind of reoccurring funding mechanism. And that initial funding that was allocated for the program is being projected that it's going to run out around April of this year. And so the kind of confusing part about all this, and what breaks a lot of moving pieces here, is that it is possible sort of at any moment that Congress could appropriate additional funding for this program. And there is a bill that's been introduced, which we'll talk about in a little bit. that so it is possible that, you know, anytime within the next few months that Congress could pass a bill, appropriate additional funding for this program, and the program could continue. But because that's not certain, and because Congress has not yet acted to appropriate that additional funding, the Federal Communications Commission, or FCC, has begun what is called the wind down process. And essentially this is set up so that there's a series of notifications that go out to consumers over a period of time, so that it's, you know, it's meant to be sort of a consumer protection clause, right? That people aren't going to be surprised if the program does end. That hopefully people will not be surprised to see that the benefit has ended, and that they are aware that it's going to, they're aware that it may end. They're aware of what their options are for continuing internet service and affording internet service and all of those pieces. So that process has begun, has been initiated, but the scenarios here, right, are that it may be that the wind down process goes completely through, Congress never appropriates additional funding, the program does not continue. It also may be the case that at some point during this wind down process, before ACP actually ends, Congress may appropriate additional funding and the program may continue. And there's sort of a murky third thing that could happen, right? Where maybe Congress appropriates funding, but it's be after the program has ended, or maybe they appropriate funding but make some changes to the program. There's some other like murky third things that could happen that no one is totally sure of what that may look like. And so I appreciate you all joining us here today, because this is a lot of again, moving pieces, unclear. No one really knows what exactly is going to happen. But we need to all be well versed in this and understand this so that we can help consumers understand it as well. And so as I mentioned, yes, so the FCC has released guidance for the beginning of the wind down, and what we're going to do now is talk you through that information. So I'm going to turn this over to my colleague David to talk through the FCC wind down order.
Thanks, Kate. My name is David Cooper Moore. I use he, him pronouns, and I work on a lot of programming here with TLC. We've been speaking to a lot of different stakeholders, folks that work with clients around the wind down order and what we know about it so far, what it potentially means for everyone that is doing this work. The most useful resources, which I'm just going to use directly, we don't want to create too many additional resources. We want to go to the sources of authority. So the National Digital Inclusion Alliance has been providing a summary and timeline of the FCC's wind down process. This is really useful because for folks that are working through these issues, either with clients or with your organization, knowing the timeline and knowing the different decision points that we're going to get to is really important, both in terms of how we communicate with clients, and just in terms of, you know, what we can say confidently that we know. And so the main thing to say right now is that we don't know a lot and we know a little bit. And so I'm going to tell you the little bit that we do know. And we'll sort of emphasize some of the talking points that we want to be using now, as opposed to how we might want to shift that as we get further down the timeline. But right now, I just want to kind of go through the wind down order, and then we'll have a lot of time for folks to maybe ask questions about it. You know, we can try to answer those questions as best as we can. All right, so this is NDIA's materials about the wind down order. The key takeaways are that the last fully funded month of the program is projected to be in April of 2024. Nobody knows exactly when that's going to be. There are some projections that say that the funding will technically go a little bit through May, and so there are some different questions that are going to happen around when that exact end date is. Folks are pretty confident that the funding will be exhausted by May at some point. So that means that the last day to enroll in the program is February 7th, 2024 at 11:59 p.m. Anybody that is trying to enroll in the ACP program will be able to do so through February 7th. And then starting February 8th, there will be a freeze on enrollees whereby people cannot enroll in the program. That includes not only enrolling in terms of getting qualified for the program, but actually applying that enrollment to an internet service provider. All of that has to happen on February 7th by 11:59 p.m. Anybody that has ACP outreach grantee that are ACP outreach grantees need to cease enrollment activities on that date. And the last fully funded month will be announced at some point in late February, which will then trigger further provider notifications to ACP households. I'm going to talk you through some of those provider notifications in just a second. So right now, the key date that we have is that enrollment freeze. The last day to enroll is February 7th at 11:59 p.m. And so that means that there will be no further enrollments after that date. There's going to be a hard cutoff there for folks trying to enroll. So that's an important date to keep in mind. At the end of these slides, they provide a timeline that we'll kind of review and talk about what some of those sort of decision points are at what point in the timeline. So FCC needs to send notifications 60 days prior to the end of the last fully funded month. So the current forecast of the last fully funded month is April 2024, which means if the estimate holds, we would expect an FCC announcement on March 1st, 2024. Those will be kind of formal announcements the FCC sends. We may get some more information about this as the FCC provides further guidance for both ACP grant outreach folks and for other folks asking about the program. The FCC is working on that guidance and they're expecting to have it out in the next, I think, couple of weeks, but they don't have a date yet for that. So this is a key part, which is the provider notifications. So providers need to notify customers 3 times in writing prior to the end of the ACP, prior to the wind down completing. The first notice is actually scheduled to go out tomorrow. Some providers have already sent some notices out. That's January 25th, 2024. That's 2 weeks from the original order publication date. Notice 2 goes out 15 days after the FCC announces the last fully funded month of ACP. So that means 15 days after that date at which the FCC has said this is when the funds will be exhausted. We're projecting that to be about mid-March, maybe the first or second week of March. And then the third notice is issued during the customer's last bill or billing cycle with the ACP benefit. So with that final bill, there needs to be a third notification about the wind down of the program. Oops. So the first notification is just to notify consumers that there is a possibility of ACP's end and the potential impact on their bill. We've already seen a couple of draft letters that have gone out to folks through some of the listservs. There's not a ton of information, and often there is the explicit you do not need to do anything right now as kind of an action step for consumers. The reason for that is because the first notification is really only to tell people that this wind down process has started. Notifications 2 and 3 are the ACP ending and date of the last bill that the ACP will be applied, and the bill amount without the ACP discount, or a statement that the customer will be subjected to undiscounted rates per terms and conditions, the ability to change their service or opt out of continuing service at the end of the ACP. So those second and third notifications really have to do more with consumer actions around the final wind down, which is not where we're at right now. Right now, we're still in that first notification where letters are going out to folks that are saying, this program is winding down and we will be communicating with you as it happens. Some of the letters are actually including some advocacy that consumers can do on their own behalf, which we're going to talk about a little bit at the end of this webinar. There's optional information that folks can provide in their notifications. The providers could include other low-cost and low-income plans that they provide, and also a phone number and website or link to this information. The provider notifications have to be in writing and accessible to persons with disabilities. There's no other specific wording or format, and so we're already starting to see different letters coming out from different ISPs. They need to be consistent with the user preferences. So however the person signed up to be contacted, they need to be contacted in that same way. That could be through email, text, and paper mail. And the providers are also encouraged to run awareness campaigns about the end of the program. Right now, again, we are still at that first notification phase where the letters going out just say, this program may be ending soon. Here's what you can do. And then there are FCC and USAC communications that need to go out. FCC and USAC need to update their websites and communication materials to raise awareness. And USAC will also directly notify ACP households multiple times. The FCC has not said with any clarity what kind of wind down outreach they're going to be doing. That's going to come in their further communication about wind down procedures, which they have not released yet. I wanted to pause here for a second because I know we have a couple of folks from ISPs on the call that may want to talk a little bit about that first notification. That's really what we're dealing with right now, is that this date of the initial notification to consumers about the wind down process is starting. Like I said, from our understanding, those are relatively, the information is usually don't do anything yet. You just need to know what's happening. But I don't know if we have anybody on the call that would like to speak a little bit to the notification process and where they're at in that process, what's been going on so far.
Hi, David. I can give a brief update from
Great.
Comcast if that's okay. So we have been distributing notifications to customers. We started yesterday, and notifications are also being distributed today and tomorrow. The notifications look largely as you described. So they include a 60-day, they include that says that ACP could end in April, that no action is required, and that will contact them again at least 60 days before the program ends, with next steps including pricing and packaging options to meet their needs. We also remind them in the notification that we have 23 million hotspots that they could access if required, and that Internet Essentials, which is our $9.95 program, exists and has existed since 2011, and that the price remains unchanged. We don't have a timeline as of yet for additional notifications for reasons that you discussed, because we don't know when the final month of the program will be, but those notifications will include SMS, bill message notifications, and will be sent in Spanish and English. So we do plan to communicate in a variety of ways and often with customers.
Great, thanks so much.
Thanks, David. Kevin Cassidy here from Verizon. First of all, thank you, Kate. Thank you, David, for your advocacy and for having us today. And thank you. You know, a lot of people on this call have some familiar names and faces, so thank you for all you do. Hopefully, we'll have better news in the future. But to reiterate, David and William from Comcast, this really the first notification has been going out and will continue to go out over the next couple of days. Really, just information that the ACP may be winding down. Updates will be shared via text messages for valued and prepaid customers, and email or snail mail, whatever their preferred method is for home internet services, so 5G home and Fios, and they're going to be in the preferred language that folks indicated while they were signing up.
Great, thanks so much. Thanks to Kevin and William for telling us that. Yeah, I think we're going to have a lot more information in the next few weeks. Right now, the notifications are fairly broad from what we've seen. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the projected sort of next steps. You know, we're not quite at this place yet, in part because of some of the ambiguity around funding. But I did want to talk a little bit about the opt-in procedures, I think is the next slide. Yeah, so I want to talk about opt-in versus opt-in requirements for essentially continuing service after the full wind down, meaning there is no more ACP benefit, and we're kind of moving into a time when there's no ACP benefit applied. that will be after at some point after April, possibly in the first or second week of May. So providers do need to, let me start that again, just to be really clear. Providers do need an additional opt-in to continue service if the consumer had not already been an active customer prior to applying the ACP benefit, if the consumer is not paying any amount for their internet service, and the discount fully covers the bill. And so for folks who have gotten connected to the internet for the first time or are paying a $0 amount for their bill, they will need to opt into continuing coverage as opposed to receiving a bill for ongoing service, according to the current understanding in that. Again, we're not quite at this place yet, but as the wind down continues, the differences between being asked to opt in and then reverting to a an original bill that you may be getting a discount on is going to be really important. So providers do not need additional opt-in to continue service if these following two things are true. Number one, household acknowledgement of review of disclosures when they enrolled in EBB or in ACP. And number two, they have demonstrated a willingness and ability to pay. So there's a couple of different ways in which people can demonstrate a willingness and ability to pay. One could be that they've informed the provider, either orally in writing, that the provider can continue providing broadband service after the end of the ACP. So they have at some point opted into that particular choice. B, the consumer had already been an active customer prior to applying the ACP benefit to their plan, meaning they've been a subscriber to the ISP, they were getting a discount on their plan, the plan will revert back to the original cost that they were paying for it. Or C, the consumer currently pays a fee for their ACP supported broadband service, meaning the ACP discount does not fully cover the bill. So there is likely going to be a lot of conversations about this element of the wind down. It's important to convey the point that we are not at that stage yet. And so we are going to have a lot more conversations about this particular part of the process as the wind down kind of reaches its final point, which is going to be in April. But we do want to just make sure this is on folks' radar screen. The one thing that we have heard from the FCC is to remind folks that the FCC consumer protections are in full effect during the wind down process. And so the process for filing a consumer complaint and for not being charged for changing services and all of the other consumer benefits that folks already have access to, those will all be in effect through the wind down process. And so that's going to be a piece that I know we're going to be working alongside the digital navigators in Philadelphia to make sure everybody is aware of. But again, I think this is really important to note that this is a piece that we're going to have a lot more information about as we get closer to that April date. This is not going to be our only communication about this process. It's just the initial communication that we're having. All right, I think we can go to the next slide.
I think there was someone with a hand
questions?
raised, I don't know.
Yeah, this is actually a good point to pause for a couple of questions that folks might have so far. Again, we're translating NDIA's language around this from their best understanding of what's been going on with the legislation and with the wind down procedures, but we're happy to answer questions as best we can. So this might be a good pause point before we get to the advocacy section.
I had a question. This is Chrissy Rockwell from Hyde, Pennsylvania. It might be too in the weeds as you were talking. I was like, maybe it's too much though. A lot of our clients are are not paying anything because they have the Internet Essentials from Comcast. So they're not paying anything, but they're already signed up for like the low cost internet anyway. So they would have to be the opt-in under this discussion.
Yeah, my understanding of it is if they were existing Comcast Internet Essentials customers prior to applying ACP, they will revert back to being Comcast Internet Essentials customers after that point.
Okay.
Folks who were new to the internet and were enrolled into an internet plan with the ACP as their first time ever enrolling, those are the folks that need to opt in to continuing service.
Okay.
That's my understanding. Yeah.
Okay.
And again, I think there will probably be a lot of other I think it's a very useful question. I think there's going to be even weedsier questions as we get closer to April. So we will absolutely have other webinars and other opportunities to share that information as we get closer to it.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'll also say that I think the idea here is that if we reach the point where providers are sending out the additional notifications later in March or April, that at that point they should be also sharing specifically with each consumer whether they need to take action to keep their internet plan, and also if they're, if they're going to be getting a bill, like what that amount would be, like that kind of level of detail should be provided later on.
Any other questions or comments at this point?
One question, Mark Anthony, Philadelphia. Those providers that offer digital devices like phones and tablets, what happens with the inventory?
Do you mean, so are you talking about the ACP benefit for the devices?
Yes.
So the ACP benefit for devices is a one-time only discount. So that nothing really changes about that. And in fact, one of the pieces of advice that the FCC gave to grant outreach recipients was finding ways to continue to allow people to take advantage of that device benefit up to that February 7th date, because it's a one-time discount that you get on the device. The continuing plan that may be associated with that device is going to be subject to all the same wind down procedures through the ACP wind down. But that ACP device benefit is a one-time benefit, and you can continue to access that benefit up until the end of February 7th.
Yeah, I understand that. Now, what about the providers that have inventory on hand? What's supposed to be done with the inventory if the program is no longer in effect?
Not sure if I have an answer for that one.
I mean, I know we're still gathering information. I just thought I'd put that out there.
Okay. Yeah, let us.
David, if I can say something, Mark Anthony, I'm not sure. I don't have an answer on hand for you. I get your question there. I'm not sure if additional inventory was created because of the program. This is something that I can check on and get back to Kate, and if there is a plan. But my guess and my assumption is, again, this is just my educated guess, is that there was not an inventory created, a surplus of inventory created for the program, that the subsidy could just be used for existing inventory.
Okay. Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
my guess as well.
Yeah.
But we can definitely see if we can get a little more information on that.
Yep. And William shares in the chat, Internet Essentials customers can also make a one-time purchase of a new Chromebook or Dell laptop for $149.99 in tax. Thanks for that, William. Any other questions?
Let's go through the timeline.
Yeah, let's go through the timeline. So this is a really helpful sort of infographic that NDIA put together for the wind down timeline. I think what we'll be able to do is these steps will remain the same, but some of the dates will be clearer as we get to each sort of point, like decision point. January 25th is the deadline for the first provider notice. So right now, if you're working with clients that have taken advantage of ACP, they should expect to get a letter from a provider that says, hey, this program might be winding down. You don't have to do anything yet, but you should know that this is happening. Some providers are, providing links to contact congresspeople about making sure the funding goes through. That's kind of where we're at, to not literally today, but tomorrow. And so that's starting to happen. February 7th is the next really important date, which is the final day for ACP enrollment. I think a lot of folks that we work with have been somewhat reticent to sign up new folks that have not had internet access in the past to the ACP program for the first time right now. And we totally understand that. I think you need to think about your relationship with your clients around whether using ACP right now makes the most sense while we're still in this sort of uncertain territory. That said, if folks do want to sign up to, save on their internet plan for like a month or two, I think conveying the information that right now the program is projected to wind down by April is an important piece of information to have. I know that some folks have experienced some delays in getting the ACP benefit applied to a bill. On our call with the FCC reminded that that when that's happening, you should always file a FCC complaint around that kind of a lag, that it should be sooner. But just a reminder about that February 7th date is that anybody that wants to be enrolled has to be enrolled not only in terms of getting approved for ACP, but also actually enrolled with the internet provider on February 7th. And so by February 8th, the enrollment and any activities associated with enrollment will be frozen. By late February, the FCC will announce the last fully funded month and will give kind of a date, at which point that will give 15 days for providers to send their second notice, which will have a little bit more detail about the wind down process. By April 1st, all provider claims from before the freeze are due. That's, I think, mostly for ACP outreach grantees. And then in April, there's an anticipated final full month of the ACP benefit, with a possible couple of weeks in May for partial ACP benefit available. And by the end of May, they expect the program to be wound down and for there to be no more funds available for existing ACP folks. At that time, the opt-in process will be really important for folks deciding whether they want to continue with service or not. And yeah, we'll have a lot more information, I think, when we get closer to these sort of future dates. So if anybody has any questions about the timeline, I think it's just nice to kind of lay it out that way. And to remember that we are all the way at the beginning of this timeline, and there's a lot that may still happen that may shift some of this. But right now we need to be operating like the wind down is happening and be prepared for it to play out as a full wind down. All right, so then the question becomes, what can we do?
One quick thing I do want to emphasize before we kind of move on to the advocacy and political side of this, and David's already been saying this, but just to make it really clear for everyone. So right now, I encourage all of you to encourage households not to make any changes at this point to their internet service, their internet bill, their internet plan, because as you can see, there's going to be a multi-step notification process if the wind down continues and Congress does not fund the program, where they'll be getting more information later about how specifically this will impact them and their bill. And they'll have a chance at that point to make a change, like changing what plan they're enrolled in, changing, deciding whether or not they can continue. Hopefully they can continue with internet access, but maybe at a different level. They can start, if they want to start thinking about these questions now, thinking about how they might make some changes to their household budget or, what they might want to do. And, they're going to be getting these notifications, letting them know that the program may be ending. So it's an important time to be, supporting this general awareness that there may be a change coming. But because it's possible that before this kind of April-ish timeline when the program actually is projected to end, it's possible that Congress will act sometime in the next couple of months to fund the program and it will continue. We don't want anyone right now to panic and drop their internet subscription or change their plan now. There will be time later for them to do that. And as more information comes out, we'll do more of these kinds of sharing information and do another webinar if it reaches that point, to make sure that you all are equipped to support consumers as they go through this process. And so we're at just like this weird point right now, right, where there's a requirement that the awareness starts to be raised about this program potentially ending, but we don't want to see anyone make changes right now to their internet service.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. Yeah, I think being really strategic about communication with clients right now is really important because there's a lot of information we don't have. And so it's really easy to give incomplete or sort of counterproductive information right now. Right now, we're really just dealing at the client side with, okay, folks are getting this letter from providers saying this program might end. And I think for folks that are working directly with clients, you just want to be honest that the benefit may extend through April and maybe a little bit beyond and then be phased out, at which point there will be a process for them to be able to opt into more coverage or to no longer have the coverage.
So
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go ahead with the ACP Extension Act. So as I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, there has been a bill introduced in Congress to allocate additional funding to continue the ACP at least through 2024. And this is what they call bicameral and bipartisan. So it was introduced in both the House and the Senate, and it has sponsoring legislators from both the Democratic and Republican parties. We'll send these slides out to you, so you have the links, but you can see the draft bill language. So a number of sponsors signed on to the legislation, and there's also a number of other legislators who have said that they would support it, or I think there's even it's a little bit nitty gritty, but I think there are even some sponsors that aren't really listed because they only list so many officially as sponsors. But so this legislation is out there. And again, it is possible that at some point over the next couple of months, Congress could pass this legislation or similar legislation to allocate additional funding for the ACP, in which case the ACP would continue, and consumers who are currently enrolled, it would just continue just as it has been. Again, it's also possible that Congress could choose to act in some other way or pass a different bill that could make some changes to the ACP. But this is the bill that's out there now. It does not make any changes to the ACP except allocate additional funding. I'll also say there have been some discussions about longer term kind of changes to the ACP, or how the ACP could continue longer term beyond 2024, which could look like could mean some real changes to the ACP and the way that it's funded. But for now, this is the immediate legislation that's out there, or that's been proposed to fund the ACP through 2024, while and kind of give Congress time to work out the details of what it might look like beyond that. And so what you can do in terms of advocacy, if you'd like to see this program continue, which presumably you all do, and so you can reach out to your members of Congress. If they're not a co-sponsor for the bill, you can ask them to co-sponsor or to otherwise support the bill and the ACP. And I will say a lot of the legislators from the Philadelphia area are in support of this. One of the co-sponsors, if I go back for a second, one of the co-sponsors in the House is Brian Fitzpatrick, who is a Republican from representing Bucks County, one of the co-sponsors of the bill. And a lot of others are already supportive of it. But even if they are supportive, it does not hurt at all to still reach out to them and remind them that this is a priority for their constituents, and thank them for supporting it and ask them to continue to support it and try to push it through, because there's Congress has many competing priorities, and so we want to make sure that this becomes more of a priority for them and continues to be a priority as they consider everything that they need to get done. So you can also highlight the bill, just ACP information on social media, share this information with your networks, and also collecting and sharing ACP stories is really important as well. Is really putting a human face on it and sharing how this has impacted you or people in your community. Those firsthand stories are really important. And so for advocacy, there are a number of resources to support you if you choose to engage in advocacy around this issue. First and foremost, I'll just highlight that this Thursday, the 25th, is Don't Disconnect Us Day. And there's a website you can go to, don'tdisconnectus.org. It'll be kind of a day of action around the ACP. But in addition to that, a number of other resources, and again, we'll send these slides out so you have these links, but the National Digital Inclusion Alliance has a really nice advocacy page that links to a lot of different resources, has sample language you can use to talk to Congress or either calling or writing sample written forms, sample like stories. There's also a spot where they're collecting stories. So if you have great stories about how the ACP has impacted an individual or family, you can share those stories there. Then the ACLU has a really quick and easy contact Congress online form where you can, just in a few clicks, fill out your information and it will send kind of a form email to your Congress people. This is one that is easy enough to use that if your clients, that you work with, the individuals that you work with who are reliant on the ACP want to take action and let their Congress people know that this is important to them, they can use that form. Anyone can use that form to, and it has kind of pre-written language, but there's space for you to customize it so someone can add in their own stories. But that is something that they keep track of this, like they'll keep track of how many phone calls and emails they get on this topic, asking them to review the ACP. And the ACLU also has a social media toolkit, which has a number of sample messages that you can kind of just copy and paste if you want to advocate for this and share information about this on social media. I also linked to the press release for that ACP Extension Act. Again, I think a lot of the legislators for the Philadelphia area, at least, are generally in support of this. But if you are outside of Philadelphia, you may have a congressperson who may not have signed on. And again, even if they are supporters, even if they are co-sponsors of the bill, it's still worthwhile to reach out, thank them for the support, and continue to remind them that this is a really important issue. Then lastly, these are just a few other resources. Again, you'll get these links afterwards, but there's the written explainer from the Benton Institute about kind of going over some of the same information that we went over today. That's just helpful if you'd like to have it in kind of written format. And we'll also link to the FCC's official wind down order, some FAQs that the FCC put together, and a wind down fact sheet that the FCC put together as well. So those are the resources that we prepared to share with you today. Happy to take any further questions or comments that folks have.
Feel free to use the chat or to just raise your hand.
One other resource I should mention, maybe I'll add this in before I send things out too, is that you can access online if you want to see like how many people in your zip code or how many people in your county are currently enrolled in the ACP. You can find that information on the USAC website. And I think I even have I have somewhere some estimates someone put together of congressional districts too. So if you are reaching out to legislators or others about this, and you want to provide some specific details to them about how many people in this district it may be affecting, or people in the county, and that kind of a thing, there are resources for that as well.
And in the meantime, definitely be, follow us for more information. As we get information, we're going to share it with everybody in our network. We will probably do a few more webinars as the wind down process continues. If there are positive updates, which is also possible, we will share those very quickly to let everybody know what's going on. And yeah,
Possible to throw one last left field question in there?
sure.
Absolutely.
Love left field questions.
Are there any numbers on what areas have been the most served and the least served with the program? Any numbers out there?
There definitely have been. And I mean, it's pretty, like, I would say it's overall, it's pretty widespread, like in terms of, it's really ACP, enrollment has folks signed up both, in urban areas and rural areas, and all different kind of, states and counties across the country, Republican and Democratic areas. Like, it's really, this is one of the reasons to maybe have hope that this program will continue, is that it really is one that touches a lot of different communities across the country, and has generally, what was originally introduced with bipartisan support and now has more bipartisan support. So we're hoping that all those, that kind of information will encourage Congress to act. And also, I think that some people do hope too that, since consumers are going to start receiving these notifications that the program may be ending, that Congress people will be hearing a lot more from their constituents about how important this program is, and asking them to continue funding it. So there is some reason for hope, but there's also, there have been certainly cases of other programs that had pretty widespread support that were not funded or did not continue. So we just don't know at this point.
Yeah.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. No, I was just curious, David, because I know, I think the original report I read, it was like when COVID hit, it was something like 35 million households didn't have access to internet. And currently it's about 22 million that has it. So that still leaves a lot of households without it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, there's still a lot of work to do. It's one reason why it's so important to get this particular extension, through in a timely way, because we are literally just starting some of our outreach for ACP, for some of the hardest to reach folks. There's folks that don't have broadband access. That's also part of all this digital equity planning. And so one thing that's really important to emphasize about the political situation is that we're just in this weird situation with the timing, where the timing makes a huge difference. And right now, given that there is this legislation, it is bicameral and bipartisan, which is like unheard of in 2024. But the timing is really, really important, so that there's not that disruption in service or the full wind down pieces. Ashley, in the text, Ashley Pollard shared Benton's ACP enrollment performance tool. So there's a link to that. We can put that in our resource link if that'll be of use to anybody. And there was also a question about the opt-in procedures, which is about whether people who currently have Internet Essentials would still have Internet Essentials afterwards. The frustrating answer is we're not totally sure, and we're not kind of at that point to be able to clarify on the timeline, but we will have a separate webinar about that if we get to it. My understanding from the, from the folks that we've talked to is anybody that was already signed up for an internet plan and are just applying a benefit to that plan will revert to the old plan. And so if somebody was signed up for Internet Essentials or some other low-cost plan and is now getting a subsidy for that plan, if ACP disappears, they will just continue on their low-cost plan. And there are a lot of low-cost plans available. Part of what we'll be doing through the wind-down process is sharing some resources for consolidating information about all the low-cost plan options in our area, and working with providers to make sure everybody is aware of all of those options as well. So that is a great question, which we'll have much more information on when we get closer to April.
Okay, if there any, I guess, last call for any other questions. And while you all are thinking, if you have any other questions, I do want to just quickly say Thank you to Kevin Cassidy from Verizon and Bill Bronson from Comcast for joining us and being available to help answer questions around particularly what your companies will be doing around this. And thanks to everyone, all of you, for joining and listening in. And sorry that we couldn't share happier news today. And I do see Chrissy, your hand up.
Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting. Is there a way to see a sample email from Comcast? I got the Verizon one, so I know what the Verizon email looks like. But like maybe a sample email from Comcast about what went out this week.
We do, so I do have the email. I have to check whether we can distribute it externally. So Kate, I can double check on that and then follow up with you offline to see whether that's something we can provide to the
Okay.
group.
Great. Yeah, they are starting to float around. I saw an Xfinity one on LinkedIn earlier today. But we'll see if we can compile. I'm gonna make sure we have kind of the official ones and make sure that they're
Yeah,
sure.
a lot of our clients are pre-literate, and I just want to see, that I have the official language to explain it to them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think the more that you understand about the process and can translate that, because I think that a lot of these letters they're not going to be saying, the first letters are not going to be telling folks to do anything. And so for you to understand the timeline and what's happening and to be able to explain that is really important. And we can always support, if you need some language to use with clients, just let us know, because we're always working with folks to make sure they kind of know what messaging to be using.
Yeah, and I think just to reiterate, because I don't know if we can say it too many times, right? I think the key message right now is that the ACP may be ending, and consumers will get more information later if Congress does not act about, about what that will mean for their internet service, their internet plans, and to have the opportunity to make a change to their internet service, internet plan, if they so choose, as a result of the ACP ending, if it does indeed end. Okay, final call for questions. Well, okay, so thank you all again for joining. We will send out these slides. And as I mentioned in the chat as well, we recorded this, so we'll share this recording as well, for anyone who may have missed or want to re-review any of the information. And as we hear more, we'll do our best to share and have more of these discussions. So thank you all again, and enjoy the rest of your day and your weeks.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Mhm.